Frank, this episode of Phone Booth Fighting is brought to you by Freshly.com. They have a great deal for you just in time for the holidays. You know, I was thinking, what do you get the hard-to-shop-for person in your life? Well, everybody has to eat, last I checked. And that makes Freshly.com a fantastic Christmas gift. You've heard us talk about it here on Phone Booth Fighting. But it is freshly cooked, never frozen, pre-prepared meals with all natural ingredients cooked by chefs with the help of nutritionists. You go to Freshly.com and you select your meals. Now, Frank, they've got good old-fashioned carnivore meals. They got vegetarian meals. They've got vegan fare, even for vegans like myself. It's gluten-free. I know that's a big concern. And for a fighter like yourself who is getting ready to fight a scary Russian in the new year, what is put on the training table to eat is going to be of utmost importance, and you've got to trust the nutritional value of what's on there, and that's where Freshly.com comes in.
Yeah, they make it very convenient, so that way it can be done very consistently.
It's that. It's also the fact that it comes right to your door. It comes in what looks like a little cooler. It's kept refrigerated, so it's completely fresh. But like I said, always fresh, never frozen. And dinner is then ready in 3 minutes or less. And, Frank, I know that's important, too, because when you got the family like you guys have and you got all the activities that they're all doing, it's nice to save that prep time, not to mention the cleanup time, when you can do the Freshly meals, especially when you're short on time before somebody has to get to softball practice.
Yep, everybody's busy nowadays. I have a full family with a full schedule of things to do. Sometimes you don't have a lot of time to sit there for a couple hours to prepare a meal. So this way you don't give up the healthiness, the nutrition, and it's very convenient.
I mentioned a special deal for the holidays, and here it is. Exclusively for Phone Booth Fighting listeners, you go to Freshly.com, you enter the promo code PHONEBOOTH. That is going to get you 6 meals for $39. 6 meals cooked by Freshly chefs for only $39. And then after you eat those 6, and you're going to want 6 more, but you're going to want to save some more money, same promo code Phone Booth, same savings all over again. So that's a total of $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to Freshly.com and enter the promo code Phone Booth. This episode of Phone Booth Fighting, Frank, also brought to you by Low T Nation, lowtnation.com. A lot of our male listeners, and let's face it, as popular as we like to think that we are with the females, we have a lot of male listeners to phoneboothfighting.com. I knew that. I just didn't know before we met the crew over at Low T Nation how many of them were in need of and going to benefit from the Low T Nation treatment regimen. And you're the one that kind of introduced me to the particulars of that world. So explain it to everybody, those who are uninitiated, those who have not had the opportunity just yet to log on to lowtnation.com and see if they're a candidate.
Well, sometimes you're feeling a little low. Your body's not operating at full capacity, so you can give Brandon a call. He'll, discuss the situation with you, see if you're a potential a person that could be benefited from this course. If that's the case, through the initial screening, send you the proper way to find out blood work. Once the blood work is done, they'll have their doctors look at it, make sure that they get you the proper medication, proper levels, make sure your body's operating at full level, and after that, it just becomes super convenient. They transport it to your house once a month, and that way you can stay as consistent as possible.
LowTNation.com, free telephone consultation, and then after that, they're going to put you in touch with a lab in your area. That lab visit, that initial lab visit, is the only thing you're going to have to do outside of your own home. And then after that, all of the treatment supplies are delivered right to your doorstep. You don't even have to walk to your mailbox. They just bring them right to the door. Log on to lowtnation.com. Give them a phone call. Tell them your story. Let them find out if you're a candidate, and they will be happy to hear from you because, as I always say, the guys that run the program over there are a couple of Phone Booth Fighting listeners just like yourself. Log on to lowtnation.com. All right, Frank, we are back. Phone booth fighting here in the bunker, deep inside the bowels of stately Mirror Manor here in suburban Las Vegas. It's a bachelor's paradise right now, except for the two teacup Yorkies, because the family is off on. They went and took a cruise without you. Is basically what happened.
Yeah, well, eventually I was supposed to be a part of it, but my ACB schedule got changed up a little bit, so I at least got to meet them at one of the ports in Cozumel.
We got to get into that in a little bit, because you did one of the craziest super dad things I've ever heard of. I thought it was impressive when you were flying home from Russia to make a T-ball game or football game, whatever it was you were doing, when you could have just stayed over there for another week. But you may have topped yourself with this latest 48 hours or so of travel. We'll talk about that here in just a bit. But we've got a fight preview to get to, and I want to go hard and heavy into fight talk first, because I know people have missed us. Let me just say, it's nice to be missed when we have taken a few extra days off. However, it is a little bit of pressure. And Frank, we hear from people. We hear from people saying essentially, hey, I'm at my shitty job. It's Tuesday. You're supposed to be in my earbuds. Where the fuck are you? I mean, I'm not paraphrasing by much what I heard from that was just from Travis, by the way, not to mention some of our other listeners. So we hear you. We know. We apologize. We really did try to hook this up. You were in Australia, which was 16 hours ahead. And it wasn't just you. Sometimes it was me, my schedule, my work schedule at the brothel. We were trying everything we could to coordinate, and it just wasn't working. So we apologize for that, but you're back in country now, and we're getting another episode underway. And we actually, after I picked you up at the airport last night, we were talking about how to, you know what, sometimes when we know we've got one of those long travel situations in front of us, even if it's just a phoner episode, maybe try to get those in.
Yeah, I think we just have to go ahead and, instead of trying to, aim for what we want, and then if it doesn't work, just, at least get something in. Right,
we'll do that for you guys. So we'll talk about all that here in just a bit. But let's talk fights. By the way, I talked to Robbie Lawler, and we're going to play that interview for you here very shortly. I talked to him not even 24 hours ago about his headlining fight this weekend, Saturday night, with Rafael dos Anjos. So we're going to preview that fight card, Frank. Now, before we hear my interview with Robbie, the fight card goes down Saturday night on the Big Fox Network, live from Winnipeg. A welterweight title eliminator serves as the main event. Robbie Lawler, coming in ranked number 2 by the UFC, former welterweight champion, is taking on number 4 Rafael dos Anjos. Of course, Lawler is coming off that unanimous decision victory over our buddy Donald Cowboy Cerrone this past July. Dos Anjos is on a 2-fight win streak since he moved up to welterweight. The former lightweight champion is now at 170. He's got wins over Neil Magny, a first-round submission this past September, and then Tarek Safadine, a unanimous decision in June, a couple of months prior to that. So first, let me ask you your thoughts on the matchup. Robbie Lawler, a former welterweight champion, taking on the former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos, who's, within the last couple of fights moved up in weight.
I still think it's a lot for dos Anjos to take on. I mean, because, Robbie Lawler is a very hard-hitting, powerful welterweight who's extremely hard to take down. I think dos Anjos is, his takedowns and the fact that he has such a high-scoring takedown game really added to his striking and his overall offensive explosion. But I think, Robbie's, synonymously always been known as a hard hitter, but also with the ability that he's just very difficult to put down as far as with takedowns.
Well, he's got, Lawler's got a 72% takedown defense success rate, which, if you look at what dos Anjos can do if you take out running the risk of trying to take him down, and of course Lawler's got that knockout power. 20 of 28 wins have come by way of KO. Then he's probably going to have to try to rely on his kicks. Actually, I asked Robbie about that. So let's listen to the interview. You'll hear it, Frank, and then we can react to what Robbie Lawler had to say just not 24 hours ago as I talked to him about his fight with Rafael dos Anjos. Ruthless Robbie Lawler is joining me on the guest line right now. He returns to main event action this Saturday night as part of UFC Fight Night in Winnipeg, Canada, on the big Fox network, taking on number 4 ranked welterweight Rafael dos Anjos. Robbie, good to talk to you again, man. First things first, I want to ask you about the state of Robbie Lawler and how you're feeling, because you look great against Cowboy Cerrone in your last fight, and leading up to that fight, you'd taken your time, you'd taken a little time off. Prior to that, you were pedal to the metal with that work rate. So I kind of want to ask you about that. On the other side of looking good in a victory over a tough opponent like Cowboy. How are you feeling, and did you feel like taking that time to rest up a little bit really benefited you at this point in your career?
Yeah, it was definitely a good resting point, but it was more like getting your life situated and keeping everything in order and knowing where you wanted to go before you got back in there. So Cowboy was a good measuring stick for where I was at that point after the long layoff, and after that it was just time to build and get better and improve on stuff.
And obviously there was a little bit of time between that fight and taking this fight against Rafael dos Anjos as well, so it didn't have to be a rush job or any kind of thing like that. Looking at dos Anjos as an opponent now, because certainly there are title implications on the line for the winner. If somebody looks at your strengths, if somebody looks at dos Anjos' strengths, obviously he's going to want to try to avoid your power. You're going to have I believe it's like a 4-inch reach advantage on him. Logic would dictate if it was possible, he might like to take you to the ground, but you've also got about a 72% defense takedown rate. So that being said, do you see this as a scenario where dos Anjos' best option is maybe to try to establish his kicking game and avoid your punches?
Yeah, I think that would be something that on the outside looking in that would be something good that he would do. But my coaches have done a great job of preparing me. I'm well prepared for wherever the fight goes. I'm prepared for kicks. Henry Hoof's getting me ready for that. I'm prepared to wrestle. Greg Jones, Ponzinibbio has gotten me ready for that, and my body's in shape. My strength and conditioning coach, Brian Harris, has got me ready for that. So, I'm well prepared for wherever the fight goes, and I plan on getting a victory and showcasing my skills.
Speaking of preparation for dos Anjos, this is a guy who, after holding the title at 155, has moved up in weight to welterweight, and he's undefeated in 2 fights since he did that. Was this, a lot of times, especially when a guy like you has been either champion or at the top of the division for so long, you can kind of see these contenders working their way up the ranks. You sort of see them coming from a long way away. But when a guy jumps divisions like this, especially at a high level, all of a sudden you could be confronted with a contender that, maybe this time last year you weren't even recognizing as being in your division. Is he a guy that you had really ever paid much attention to before he moved to welterweight?
No, I actually try not to pay too much attention to any of these fighters out there. Not out of disrespect or anything like that, but guess what I'm doing? I'm trying to focus on myself, trying to be a better dad, trying to be a better husband, trying to be a better human, trying to be a better fighter. So I don't think I can fully do that when I'm watching everyone else, watching their steps. So I'm focused on myself, how I can get better, how I can improve. And obviously there's lots of fighters out there. I can't control what they're doing, how they're beating each other up, but what I can control is my path and how I'm growing and how I'm developing.
Well, what's your take, Robbie, in a general sense on a guy like this that jumps a division? Because everybody's body types are different. Sometimes it makes more sense for a fighter than it does others. But one thing seems to be universally true, and that's the more you move up in weight, the more you're risking losing whatever power you're taking with you. that can be a problem when you're running into a power puncher like yourself. Do you think maybe that puts Dos Anjos at a disadvantage?
I don't know. I think you definitely lose advantages when you move up in weight classes. Obviously, guys are a little taller, guys are a little stronger, but I just feel like I'm but there's also guys who are 145ers that I train with that are like super strong, and you're like, man, this guy's strong. Everyone's different. Everyone's body type is different. Everyone has different abilities, but I feel like I'm well prepared, and my body feels great. So I feel like I'm going to go out there and get a W.
You're a guy who's got 20 of your 28 wins have come via knockout. So you know what it's like to put somebody to sleep. And over that time, obviously, you faced a lot of guys who are or have been known as notoriously hard to finish. Dos Anjos is one of those guys. He's been knocked out twice, and he's been submitted once over 36 fights. Has it been your experience when you're facing one of those guys with a reputation of being tough to finish? I mean, even when you finish them, can you feel that? Do you feel like, okay, that guy's reputation was well-deserved, or do you find when you're fighting them that maybe that's because they just haven't faced you yet?
Going into the fight, you're always like, my mindset is I'm going to go out there, knock the guy out, and when he proves you wrong, you're in the fight, you just you're focused on the task at hand. You just focus on slipping punches, landing kicks, not getting kicked, not getting taken down. So you're focused on the task at hand, and then after the fight's over, then you kind of assess the situation, and you're kind of like, damn, this guy's tough.
You know, I mentioned that there is very likely a welterweight title shot on the line for the winner of this fight, and in your case, that would be a rematch against Tyron Woodley. You know, you get that rematch, you're going to be the rested Robbie Lawler that you know, maybe isn't on quite the same breakneck work rate that you were on going into that first fight with him. Does that, I know I'm sure you don't like to look ahead, but I also know you'd probably like to run that one back. Is that the kind of thing that you feel like maybe would give you a better advantage in a rematch as opposed to the first time around?
No, I don't think all that stuff matters. It obviously, rest is good, but also being sharp is good. So it's all about being prepared on that day. I wasn't prepared like I needed to be. He took advantage of it, got the win, and a lot of things changed in my life after that fight. A lot of stuff for the better. I've grown from that fight, so I'm going to be better the next time, and I'm going to be better every day from now until I'm done. It's just one of those things. You just improve. You don't try to look back. You just try to get better and continue to grow.
Last thing for you, Robbie. What was the biggest around the house accomplishment that you took care of during that time off? For me, it's like I got a garage I've been meaning to clean for 2 years, and if I ever get a week off of work, that's what I'm going to do. I'm guessing there might have been one big home project or something like that you might have had the time to get around to, or no?
No, not really. I'm pretty relaxed. I just use that time to relax and spend time with my family.
Nice. That's what I'm going to do instead of clean the garage if I probably ever get that week off. So I'm with you.
Yep, that's a good idea.
Hey, thanks, man. Always exciting to see you in action. And this Saturday night, you're back in the main event against a tough opponent, Rafael Dos Anjos. It's going to be a great fight. So everybody can tune in Saturday night, UFC on Fox Live from Winnipeg. Ruthless Robbie Lawler. Always good to chat with you, man. Thanks for the time today.
Thank you.
There goes Robbie Lawler. I was trying to get out of him exactly. I wanted to get in depth with him about what he did during that time off. I was hoping he'd be like, actually, I got into Scientology for a while. I learned a lot, and it wasn't for me long term. But anyway, he wasn't offering any detailed information. What are your thoughts, though? Haven't heard him there, Frank, as far as the fight goes. He says, and makes a lot of sense when you're Robbie Lawler, that you go in with the intent of knocking somebody out. You got 20 KOs on your record. Dos Anjos is a hard guy to finish. He's only been stopped 3 times in 36 fights. 1 submission and 2 KOs. He goes to decision about half the time. Yeah. So, which would indicate that would likely, I don't see him finishing Robbie Lawler. So it seems like either Dos Anjos has to somehow, and I don't see him having a lot of success taking this to the ground. So it's kind of like Dos Anjos either takes this to a decision and somehow looks better than Lawler, or what I think might be more likely is that Lawler knocks him out.
Yeah, I think that eventually Lawler's going to catch him. I think that, first, I would think that Dos Anjos is going to try to see if he can, work the takedown in and get Robbie down. And if that doesn't work, I think he's going to sit back and then try to beat up his legs and try to really just use a leg attack on Robbie. Because, Robbie, he can kick back, but he typically just, he's more of a boxer that checks kicks. And if that works. But every time that's a risk, standing in front of Robbie that, he might catch you with a shot.
What do you think about what Robbie said about, because you and I were actually here watching that Lawler-Woodley fight at Stately Mirror Manor when it happened, and it didn't last very long, and Lawler got overwhelmed. He got KO'd by Woodley. Having, heard Robbie say what he said just now about to paraphrase a little, but I think he was basically saying he wasn't sharp, he wasn't really ready for the fight, etc. Is that the way it looked to you?
No, I just think he got caught by somebody that was very explosive and hits hard in Woodley, and that fight could have went the other direction, and in a blink of an eye. But I think fighters don't like to acknowledge that there's a lot of chaos involved in what we do, that there's a lot of uncertainty, and and you can do everything right, and the other guy can just happen to just and do everything wrong and nail the hit the head on the hammer on the nail, the head, and that's what happened. He got caught with a great shot that Woodley threw, and it took him out.
It also seems like too that if Robbie gets past Dos Anjos Saturday night, that as much as Lawler would benefit from the rematch with Woodley could really use the rematch with Lawler, even though he won the first time, because it was Woodley's last exciting fight. And, he's got a little bit of that stigma now where the title defenses since the Wonder Boy Thompson fight, the Damian Maia fight, were not super competitive fights, talking about the last 2. You're going to have that highlight reel finish of Lawler to show building up that fight, to showcase what Woodley is capable of. And then, like you said, it could have easily gone the other way, so it's not like people won't be tuned in because they'll see it as a competitive fight. I guess what I'm saying is I think that is the infusion of adrenaline that the Woodley title reign could actually really use right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that was the fight that the last time that Woodley himself actually went out trying to take risks in a fight. Since then, he's wanted to and self-proclaimed that I'm going to fight to make sure I stay the champion. And so I don't know if that fighting style of trying to be safe necessarily is the best approach to Robbie. And somebody who's going to march you down and try to knock your head off. It'd be interesting if it pulls him back out of that and reinvigorates that aspect of his game.
Let's talk about the co-main event Saturday night. That is going to be the number 3 ranked featherweight in the world, Ricardo Lamas, taking on Team Alpha Male product Josh Emmett. Now, if you're wondering what Josh Emmett is doing in there as the mystery guest, he was not the original opponent. This fight was supposed to be Ricardo Lamas and Jose Aldo. And then when Frankie Edgar had to pull out of his title fight with Max Holloway a couple of weeks back, Aldo stepped in as a replacement opponent, which left Lamas without an opponent, and in stepped Josh Emmett. Now, Emmett is 12-1. His only loss came via split decision against Desmond Green back at UFC 10. All 4 of his UFC fights have gone to decision, and 3 of those have been splits. So while he's been on a successful run in the UFC, he is unranked, and he wins or loses close fights. But even when he wins those decisions, like I said, 3 of those 4 have been split. So I mean, this is a no lose situation for him, because obviously he's getting a great opportunity to take advantage of. It's one of those situations where really, if anything, the downside might be on Lamas.
Yeah, that's something that's always difficult to deal with, is that when you're a fighter with a name and you're fighting somebody who's doesn't, all you really have to go for Lamas is down. All he can either keep treading water and get the win and stay basically in the same spot he is now and set himself up for better fights in the future, or he can go out there and still win and have a bad performance and even drop that way.
Yep, Lamas is on a 2-fight win streak, most recently knocking out Jason Knight and submitting Charles Oliveira. Lamas is a guy who has been, a perennial contender at the top of the featherweight division for quite a while now, and it just seems, it speaks to his tenacity and his longevity that he's always in that top 3 or so conversation, but still has yet to really put it all together and get himself, into that, get that title around his waist. So
well, and then when he did fight for the title, he fought Jose when he was still in his prime, and so it just it's a tough division, but I think that says a testament of I think guys would rather be like a Lamas or like a Cowboy Cerrone, somebody who's always been there consistent over a long period of time, because that's much more difficult than putting together a 3 or 4 fight win streak. The cards line up for you properly because of injuries or because of absences or timetables, and then you get a title shot, and then all of a sudden, I'm in. It's like, well, that relies more upon luck. But when you're a consistent fighter who fights a lot, like Lamas, and consistently stays in the top 5, I think that's more of a testament of how good you are.
So a matchup of 2 strikers. Ponzinibbio and Perry. Now, Mike Perry is a guy who I'm trying to think if it's, has it been a couple of years? I'm trying to think about when he made his debut, but I'll always remember, we were just talking about Cowboy Cerrone a second ago. I think I've told this story on Phone Booth Fighting before.
Yeah, it can only be about a year and a half.
Yeah, it wasn't very long ago. He was a late replacement opponent for somebody. I have to look it up and remember who it was. But he was sitting there, and, it was media day. They got, a dozen or so fighters sitting around the perimeter of a room. Media's going around interviewing them. Perry was right next to Cerrone. Cerrone was either in the feature or the co-main or something of this pay-per-view, and, of course, everybody always wants to talk to him anyway. So he's got a big throng of media around him. Mike Perry's checking his text messages. Mike Perry's just sitting there kind of looking at his phone. I see him over there. The one thing I knew about him is that he had won all of his fights. He was undefeated, and he won, I believe, at that point, all of his fights by knockout. And so I went over and I started talking to him, and this guy turned it on. Like, he was prepared. He was already talking like he was the main event. And I immediately noticed that about him, and I remember telling him after. Yeah, I remember telling him after I turned the mic off. I said, as soon as more people than me start talking to you, you are in business. You are ready to go, And sure enough, people, of course, he's brash and he's great at the trash talk and all that kind of stuff. So I'd like to declare myself clairvoyant, but I was probably not the only person to ever notice that. Perry 11-1, all 11 wins coming by way of knockout. Now, his lone loss in the UFC was that unanimous decision loss to Alan Jouban. That was a year ago. Since then, he's on a 2-fight win streak over Alex Reyes and Jake Ellenberger. Ponzinibbio, though, Frank, you got 2 interesting things about this matchup. One, they're both strikers. Ponzinibbio could probably be painted as the more technical striker. Perry's the guy who's going to be a little wilder, try to lure you into that brawl. But Ponzinibbio, in 28 fights, has only been KO'd twice. He's on a 5-fight win streak. He's gone 7-2 in UFC competition. So he's also got the fact that, over 28 fights, he's only been finished twice. he may be a little harder for Mike Perry to knock out than what Perry's been used to up to this point.
Yeah, but I think that if Perry can draw him into more of a wild matchup, that's one equalizer of anybody who's a technical striker is if you get them to throw their technique out and just start throwing, getting consumed by the crowd, let emotion sway into it, then it can equalize and bring it back into the fact that, Perry's a really good athlete and very powerful and, has some good attributes that he's able to utilize well.
Yeah, it's, I think one way or another for fans of the striking game, this is going to be a high point for this card, and I think Perry is still very much in a mindset of he's one of those fighters to me that is sort of fighting to where he wants to be, not necessarily where he's at right now. It reminds me a little bit of the way that I always perceived Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson could make you believe wherever he was on the card that this was the main event. You know what? If you haven't thought about my fight up to now, you should have been, because let me tell you why. And it never failed. I'd either get done interviewing Tony Ferguson or I'd hear Tony Ferguson interviewed. He might be on the prelims, and I'd get done with the interview, and I'd be like, whew, boy, that fight, that's going to be a good fight. Of course, he backed it up a lot. Most of the time it was. But my point being, I think that there are certain fighters who come along that just have an ability to sort of go ahead and teleport themselves to that main event, feel, and they're just waiting for everybody else to catch up. But I think that's a very beneficial component for a fighter to have.
Yeah, I think that X factor is still sometimes hard to coach and put into people. Just whether it seems like at this point, just people either have it or they don't. That are just if you're interesting and cause interest.
Rounding out the main card here, and this will conclude our preview before we talk about some other things, is the light heavyweight heavy-handed Glover Teixeira, still ranked number 3 in the world. I mean, Glover's a guy who, had his shot at the title with John Jones, came up short there, but you talk about a guy who's stubborn and not wanting to go quietly out of...
when we say ranked number 3 in the world... Are they all UFC fighters in that ranking?
Yeah, these are the UFC rankings.
Oh,
so this is
UFC's third in the UFC.
Right. A lot of people
because the Bellator. You wouldn't say third in the world. Bellator,
exactly.
Right?
No. I say the world. Really, I should say UFC rank because, for example, a lot of Junkie, I think, uses their USA Today rankings because they've got their own separate rankings, and those do differ. I guess my feeling about the rankings is, if we're going to be previewing UFC, I will typically go by whatever the UFC is doing because I think whenever possible, that's what they're going to go by. I
agree with that. I just think that when you use the moniker in the world.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm really saying UFC. Glover Teixeira at number 3 is taking on Misha Cirkunov, who is number 7 in the world. This fight was originally supposed to take place, Frank, in late October. It was delayed because Glover's hand was slow to heal from some surgery. Now, Glover, despite still being ranked by number 3 by the UFC, has lost 2 of his past 3 fights. He was KO'd by Alexander Gustafsson and Anthony Johnson. And for Misha's part, he's only been KO'd once. Glover, 15 KO wins in 32 fights. So Glover's a guy who hits hard. Half of his fights he's won by knockout. That being said, he's coming off hand surgery, and he's fighting a guy who's only been knocked out once.
Yeah, but I think Glover Teixeira can knock anybody out. He's a powerful puncher, and getting knocked out by Anthony Johnson, that's a guy that can knock anybody out.
That's
too.
true.
They go back and forth, and who knows? Just whoever lands is falling over. And then in the fight that he lost against Gustafsson. That was just incredible boxing from Gustafsson. I don't think it was necessarily power shots that, it was just accumulation of shots, just going over, what was it, the 4th or 5th round finally, I think he got put out, just after Gustafsson put on just one hell of a clinic.
Yeah, it's he's a guy, who was late to get to the UFC. I mean, that was kind of another thing. If you remember, it took him a while to get to the UFC. So he's a guy who, despite his age, we really have not been able to see over his entire career, and maybe weren't able to we weren't able to appreciate him as much as if we had him in the organization longer, because it seemed like it wasn't very long at all. He had elevated himself to that fight against John Jones, taking on the best in the world at that point. And, if that's the worst fight sin you've ever committed, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and I thought he had a good showing in that fight. You know, and just John was able to avoid getting hit hard by Teixeira. But I think Teixeira is still a formidable force. And I still, I think that this is a fight that, barring, the superstars of his division, I think he pretty much could make a run on anybody.
Yeah, his opponent, Misha Cirkunov, by the way, is coming off a KO loss to Volkan Ozdemir from May, but prior to that, he had not lost since 2012. And 7 of his 13 wins have come via submission. It's interesting, previewing this card, you don't see a lot of submission possibilities on this card. Maybe the co-main event somehow, some way, but this is a good card. This is for a big Fox Network card that casual fans who are having free TV piped into their house can appreciate. This is a good one. It may be with the exception of Robbie Lawler. I mean, it may be a little short of household recognizable names to those casual fans, but if they tune in, I think they're going to see a really good fight card. All right, we'll talk a little more fights here in a second, because we got to talk about George St. Pierre, the latest with him. But first, Frank, let's catch everybody up on this story for the last 24 hours. Frank, okay, first of all, let's work backwards. I came over tonight, and it was 7 o'clock p.m., maybe 6:45 p.m., and you were in bed.
Yeah.
You were sleeping. Okay. I picked you up from the airport last night. Now, tell everybody, you were doing ACB over in Australia for the last week or so. Australia is one of the furthest distances you can travel from where we are, right?
Pretty much.
How long does it take to fly there?
It was 15 hours from LA.
15 hours. Okay. So an hour and a half flight, hour flight to LA, I think, from here. Okay, and then 15 hours. Okay. So better part of 24 hours, you're flying to get there and then coming back. Now, to get there, you went Vegas to LA to Australia. To get home, you took a much more complicated route. Explain the route and explain why you did it.
About a year ago, the wife and I, she booked a cruise during this time, and
she booked your 18th Disney cruise that you were going to take, right?
So it was also during the time of our anniversary, and 14 years here, December 10th, and so
congratulations, happy anniversary.
So ACB came out with their schedule. It fit and it matched. I was like, all right, cool. I think I was doing the show in Australia December 2nd. Mm-hmm. Well, a couple months ago. Sorry, guys. My body, I don't know where I am.
I hope you know the ending to this story, Travis, because if he falls asleep, you're going to have to finish it. Okay.
So they moved the card to December 10th or 9th, and the cruise takes off on the 10th.
So the cruise that you had planned for a year and you thought you were free and clear on the schedule all of a sudden conflicts with the ACB work schedule.
So Britta took my spot on the cruise, and then I was going
Britta, the children's caretaker.
Right.
Would she have a title? What do we call her? Is she okay with Danny?
I
don't know if that's kind of demeaning or whatever.
Another little sister. I don't know.
Yeah, but she's more than just she helps with the kids, but she's also a teacher, so she can do tutoring and she has a lot of stuff she does.
Like, we always make jokes that she's like mom number 2 and husband number 2. Like,
yeah. If she could host a podcast, I wouldn't even be here. That's the only reason I'm here. Okay, so she gets to take your spot on the cruise. Lucky her, by the way.
So when I landed in L.A. Sunday night,
you land in L.A. From Australia, you have flown 16 hours to L.A. So obviously, you're just going to come straight home to Las Vegas.
No, the wife, I wanted to see the kids at some point, and so we figured out, one of the ports on Tuesday that they'll be at, is in Cozumel, a little island in Mexico on the east side, and I was like, oh, well, I could just go there. So that's what I did. So I got to the airport Sunday night, had a 5-hour layover, had a suitcase full of dirty clothes. Basically, I'm not even wearing I have no underwear on. Like, I'm just, going commando because I have, I jump in a cab to go to Target just to buy a couple, Hanes T-shirts just to have something to.
In LA during the layover.
During the layover.
Okay.
And take the cab back. I jump on the plane, then now take a flight from L.A. to Miami.
How long is that?
That wasn't too bad. I think that's like 4.5 hours, 5 hours almost.
Okay, but at this point, you've been traveling over 24 hours.
Yeah, that was rough.
Okay.
So
now you're in Miami.
So now I'm taking a red eye from LAX to Miami. I land, and then I'm walking around the airport. I'm trying to actually, that's when I kind of realized, I'm like, this isn't good for the body. I was trying to see where my next flight, what gate it was and stuff, because when I had checked in, it hadn't been assigned yet.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up at the prompter, and I can't see it. Like, I could see the prompter, but I can't focus in on the letters. Like, everything's blurry. I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, almost like I took a shot. I'm like, I can't really focus. And so I'm trying to turn my head side to side, and then I kind of close my eyes, and I'm rubbing my eyes, and I'm looking up. I'm like, I'm gonna have to ask for help. I can't read right now. Like,
you're grabbing Herb Dean's leg at this point.
Yeah, I was. Be funny if Herb was there. Then actually. So then I take it's a 2.5 hour flight. Into Cozumel. I get to the hotel, I crash, I wake up in the morning, and then and this is where now my sleep schedule is just destroyed right now.
Now, wait, what time? Where is it now? What day?
So now it's like 3 in the afternoon
on Monday or Tuesday?
East Coast time, Monday.
Okay.
I finally have landed now, so I get to the hotel room, and I fall asleep until about 2 in the morning, and now I'm awake. So I'm like, all right, now what do I do? So I'm researching where the port is that they're going to come in at, and my hotel's like 3.4 miles away. So then I go outside, and it's like 6 in the morning, nothing's open, and I'm like, I'll just walk. So
yeah.
I'm walking down the streets of Mexico Island, Cozumel, and I'm thinking at first, I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to get pulled over by the police, because it's probably weird to see someone at just 6 in the morning going for a stroll. It's like,
yeah, are
you drunk, from the bars, or you just, are you?
And by the way, what time that afternoon are you going to be seeing the family?
7:30 in the morning. They dock.
Okay, so you've got 5.5 hours to kill. So it's kind of like that's not enough time to get tired and go back to sleep. You're wide awake. You just got to kill 5.5 hours. And at this point, you've been up like a day and a half, except for that little time you crashed at the hotel.
Yeah. So then I go and go walk, and then I see the boat Disney pulling in. I'm sitting there watching, hanging out, and I'm watching people go to work, get started, and and then they finally get there, and I get to spend the day with the kids. We go back to the hotel, to the beach, and it was great. I got to spend some, a good 6 hours with them, and I took them back to the port, which I actually kept making jokes to Jennifer. I'm like, Jen's emotional that I can't go with them, and she misses me, and as I'm saying bye to her, there's security stand there that only lets the people that are documented, go through. And I have to stand here now and watch her go. And I made a joke. I'm like, they're going to think you just found some fucking Mexican guy and fell in love with him. And you're bawling to try to, to have to leave him at the port. Because I mean, like, who just goes and visits their family while they dock for a day? Like, who's that guy? I'm like, what? He's not getting on the boat with you? No, he can't get on the boat. He's here. Like, what?
That is so true.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there looking at the people, and then they're staring at us like this is a weird situation. Like, and then to knock it off, as I turn around and start walking off, this very European white family come by, and they start, and the guy, he practices his Spanish on me. He's like, Buenos dias. And I'm like looking at him. I'm like, good morning. Then they look, show, like, dude, I'm not, it was kind of a fun experience. So then I went back to the hotel. And the next morning, jumped on a flight and flew here, and you picked me up from the airport. And then
you flew from Cozumel to
Cozumel back to Miami.
Back to Miami.
2.5 hours, and then 5.5 hours from. It's longer going back. So then I flew there, and then when you picked me up, I didn't feel really bad. I laid down in the, I thought I'd be. I was like, oh, I actually don't feel horrible. I was like, I don't feel great when we were in the car. I was like, let's just do the show tomorrow.
Yeah, because your initial idea is that I would pick you up at the airport at 8:30 at night. We'd get back here at night, and then we would do a podcast.
Yeah, and I was tired because
after all that, we're going to.
Yeah, so I was like, because again. On Wednesday morning, I woke up at freaking 4 in the morning again, 3 in the morning. I'm like, I'm looking around, I'm trying to sit in the bed. I'm like, I don't wake up early. That's just not my MO. So at that point, when you'd pick me up, with the time difference, I'd only almost been awake, for 22 hours. So I was like, I'll just come back to the house and fall asleep. And so my body was telling me that it wanted to go to bed. So I just crawled into bed, laid down, and then like 2 hours later, my eyes just opened. And then I was wide awake. And I've been awake all morning, all afternoon. And then about 3 o'clock, it was just hit me. I'm like, I can't keep my eyes open. And then that's when it was funny because Travis knocked on the door. At 6:30, I just opened the door. I'm like, dude, I'm going to keep laying down until Richard gets here, And then I was just sitting in the room, basically I feel like a kid that got woken up at midnight. Like, all right, we got to get up and go. I'm like, my body does not but right now I'm I think my circadian rhythm is completely off.
Once again, a candidate for Dad of the Decade story. Travis, grab your mic there for a second. You've procreated twice. Is this story not? I mean, it impresses me, but you actually lived the dad experience. When you hear a story like that, Dad's traveled. First of all, he had to fly from Australia to the United States. He's been traveling 24 hours. Now he's going to travel another 12 hours or so to fly to the other side of Mexico via the other side of the country, by the way, to spend 6 hours with you at the beach before he gets back on a plane and flies the better part of 24 hours back home. I mean, it's unconscionable, isn't it?
It's not normal. Mm-mm. Yeah, he makes wrestlers look pretty bad.
Yes.
Athletically and family-wise,
it's an uncommon kind of love.
Yeah.
And once again, when those children get home, don't even give them time to take their mouse ears off. I want you to march them in the bunker right here in front of me, and I will scare them straight about how this could have turned out if they'd been born into a different family. Because my dad didn't have any story close to that, close to it.
Well, I'm suffering for it now, though.
Well, you are to be commended, sir.
My eyes are burning. That's why I'm staring over at you. I was like, ugh.
It's very impressive, and you're living it. So I don't know if you realize how impressive it is, but it's really something. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, man.
Now let me just to clarify though, we're still at this point, 4 months or so away from fight time. At some point, this kind of stuff is going to be cut off for training camp,
this
right?
This is about the last month of any of this.
Okay, you're not going to be doing this 2 weeks before the fight, something like that. Okay,
I have the traveling's going to cut down drastically the next 2 months.
Okay,
and then, this was the last of this horrendous of travel.
Yes,
and then the months of March and April, obviously zero traveling.
Let me. Okay, good. Let me because
I think the last part of February I really don't have anything either.
Yep, because we got a fight to focus on, and by we I mean you who have to do the actual fight, and me who has to keep the backpack organized. So
kind of boring.
here's
just to train and not do anything else.
Here's an interesting little slice of the evening that I'm gonna share with the listeners and Travis and maybe you, Frank, because you might have been too incoherent at that point to appreciate it. So I pick Frank up last night at the airport, and we're at McCarran Airport, and it's right. You've been to the airport, Travis. There's that moving sidewalk thing that brings you right out to the end of Terminal 1 where everybody picks up and everything. So I park in the short-term parking. So I actually went in, met Frank, and then we're coming out. We're right at the end of that moving sidewalk, about to cross over into the parking structure, and an airport attendant is pushing.
Shit. You know what's so funny?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that till you just said this right now.
Yeah.
Like if Jennifer would have asked me about hey, what happened after the airport? Like, no, Richard picked me up.
Yeah, you don't remember it at all,
I
right?
do now.
Okay. So an airport attendant this guy is pushing this elderly lady in a wheelchair. He's one of those guys like if the elderly need assistance or whatever. He's wheeling her off the plane to wherever she's going. So he's wheeling her, and he walks past us. He sees Frank, recognizes Frank, and asks if he can take a picture with Frank.
Did the wheelchair keep going?
Don't get ahead of me. Don't get ahead of me. So
it's along those lines, man. You got it right.
So it's kind of like he's like in the moment. He's like, "Oh, can I take a picture?" Frank says, "Yeah, no problem." And then he kind of all of a sudden realizes he's got the woman in the wheelchair.
I think realized because I'm staring at her.
Right. Frank
I'm
said,
like looking at her. I'm like, is she okay with this?
Yeah. Frank said, "Well, yeah, but is she, okay?" And it's kind of like he forgot he had her for a second. He's like, "Oh yeah," and he simultaneously. First, he asked the lady, if it's okay if he stops and takes this picture, and she's like, "Huh? What? What do you say? What? Yeah? Like who?" He's trying to explain what mixed martial arts is and all this kind of stuff. And then he appears to start to hand her the camera so she can take the picture. And Frank points to me, and he says, "Well, it's okay. He can take the picture."
Yeah.
So I take the guy's phone. He poses with Frank, and yes, Travis, the wheelchair starts rolling.
If he has this picture at home, you can look at it. You can see a very concerned kind of like my body started orientating toward. I'm like, oh shit.
She started rolling toward the street.
Slowly. It wasn't too dangerous, but enough to make you uncomfortable.
It was time to get the picture snapped, and he was able to reach out and get a hand on the handlebars or whatever. But she was about to roll into the road. So that was funny too, because until you mentioned it, your pose, Frank, was kind of like you had the arm around him, kind of, but there was a little space between the two of you, like in case you had to spring into, in case you had to sprawl out and grab the wheelchair lady. Huh? Who? What? What do you say? Huh? All right. So that's what happened with that. All right. Frank, you missed some big news while you were gone, although you seem to be somewhat up to speed on it when I got you in the car. There was a big senatorial election in Alabama, and Alabama is the reddest of red states. It's I think considered like the 5th most conservative state in the nation. Judge Roy Moore. We talked about Judge Roy Moore on the last couple episodes of the show. Ten Commandment guy, the accused of dating the 14-year-old guy, to put it lightly. He was running for Senate in a special election against a guy named Doug Jones. Doug Jones was the Democrat. Doug Jones was the overwhelming underdog in this election. Even going into election night, even with the allegations against Roy Moore, it was predicted by just about everybody that Roy Moore was going to win this thing. Doug Jones upset him. It was a huge upset in the Senate, and of course,
by a small margin.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, still a tremendous upset. And now the Republican senatorial majority of 52 will shrink to 51. So, I was talking to you in the car though, because crazy as it sounds, the allegations that came out about Roy Moore, about not only the 14-year-old, but there were allegations that he had a history of dating 17, 18-year-olds, one 16-year-old in the mix when he was well into his 30s. Now, the age of consent in Alabama is 16, but he had one underage accusation and then just a host of other pretty creepy ones. But for as much talk as there was about that, it really took the focus off of some of his truly nutty ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of a difference that would have made in Alabama, but I just played over not this clip, Travis, but the Roy Moore split, this one. I just want to play you a little clip of this because this was election night. Roy Moore, actually heard David Axelrod put this into context. He said, it's a bad sign when your candidate the last week of an election, when normally they're in overdrive, has to go into hiding. I mean, they're like in the witness protection program because you don't want them out there, you just not want them to say anything, and maybe we can hold our razor-thin lead. This is his spokesman. Now, Jake Tapper here is going to ask him about several things that Roy Moore has been on record as advocating, that homosexual activity should be illegal and that there should be a religion test in Congress, that no Muslim should be allowed to serve in Congress. Like Keith Ellison most notably does now from the state of Minnesota. But listen to this exchange with Roy Moore's spokesperson.
Controversial comments about homosexuality. Listen to this from 2005.
Okay.
Do you think that homosexuality or homosexual conduct should be illegal today? That's a yes or no question.
Homosexual conduct
should be
illegal. Yes.
Should be illegal.
Yes.
Does Judge Moore still believe that homosexual conduct should be against the law?
The reason people support Judge Moore in the state of Alabama is because he's a biblically based custom law of the Bible, the Mosaic English law. Homosexuality is a sin in the biblical sense. That is where Roy Moore is in the state of Alabama.
Well, does he believe that the Christian Bible should be the law of the United States of America?
This country was founded on the Christian Bible. Founded on the Mosaic law, the Old Testament and the New Testament, Jake.
This country has a separation of church and state, and we have laws that are not rooted in the Christian Bible.
Jake,
we have laws that
you don't understand.
I think I understand perfectly.
You don't understand.
Here's my question for you.
You do not understand.
Here's my question for you, sir. Does he think that homosexual conduct should be illegal? It's a yes or no question.
Probably.
He probably thinks homosexual conduct should be illegal. And what would the punishment be for a man having sexual relations with another man or a woman having sexual relations with another woman? What should the punishment be?
It's just a sin, okay?
I understand what they tell you in church or what they tell you in synagogue or what they tell you in a mosque.
That's what my Bible tells me. I'm not talking about the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Well, I mean,
that's what this is about.
There are all sorts of...
You people want to take the whole 2,000 or 3,000 years of our history, and y'all just want to throw it out the window as if you're just going to make your own rules, your own man-made rules, and do whatever you want and sin. And that's part of the problem we've got in Washington, D.C. today, Jake. We got too many people winging it up there. They're fooling with women they shouldn't be fooling with. They ought to love their wives. Roy Moore loves his wife. Kayla loves him. It's clear on television. You can tell that. And that's the problem in this country. We need to get back to moral law.
What should, okay, you think we should get back to moral law. What should the punishment be for two men having sexual relations? What should the punishment be? I understand you think it's a sin. I don't know.
I'm not going to make that decision.
Judge Moore has also
said
pause it. That he doesn't...
All right. First of all, I thought we were past this. Even the Republican Party, I thought we were past this. I thought this was considered a loser issue. That's why now everybody understands we got gay marriage and move on. Right?
No.
Like, how do you apply this? First of all, the reason we don't have a sodomy law anymore is because it didn't work. You know, that used to be, I mean, it's only been in the last 10, 15 years that the last of the sodomy laws were struck down. But
Is it out of the military now?
What's that?
Don't they have that in the military still, though?
I don't know. They may have their own. I mean, they've got a military law, but
the reason you put the sodomy in there too is based on the same.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that but it's not a law, and so but with a law like a sodomy law, that was never enforceable. And even when they tried to enforce it, it was selectively enforced. It was they would enforce it against a gay couple that they somehow discovered was having gay sex, but they wouldn't enforce it on a married heterosexual couple that was engaging in sodomy.
Having a good Friday night.
Exactly. So to me, when you look at laws, you just try to decide whether or not it's like making it illegal to kill yourself. Who do you prosecute?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a waste of time. And boy, I know Alabama was behind the times, but I just thought we were past this.
No, man. That's why even why is it Alabama or Mississippi that actually teaches creationism inside their school system?
Well, did you catch the spokesman here? Did you catch his? You want to just throw out our 2,000 or 3,000 years of history? Did you catch that? Yeah. So these were claims that first clip was Roy Moore talking about this just back in 2005. And as you and I've talked about, I mean, I really do want to be super careful about all of the allegation culture and the wave of allegations, everything. Obviously, anybody who's done anything like that needs needs to answer for it. But I do believe in innocent until proven guilty and all that. So it's like, it's not even for more. It wasn't even so much that, okay, well, every one of these women must be telling the exact truth because I can look in their eyes and know. No, I wasn't saying that. I was saying, listen, this guy is certifiably nuts even before any of this came up because of clips like this and then because of the last minute or so of this. Listen to what he says about the religion test.
A Muslim member of Congress should be allowed to be in Congress. Why? Under what provision of the Constitution?
Because you have to swear on the Bible. When you are before, I had to do it. I'm an elected official, 3 terms. I had to swear on the Bible. You have to swear on the Bible.
Pull your cord there. There you go.
Do that ethically, swearing on the Bible.
You don't actually have to swear on a Christian Bible. You can swear on anything, really. I don't know if you knew that. You can swear on a Jewish Bible.
Oh, no,
you can swear
I swore on the Bible. I've done it 3 times.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've picked a Bible, but the law is not that you have to swear on a Christian Bible. That is not the law.
Listen to this pause.
You don't know that? All right, Ted Crockett with
I
the
don't know.
God.
I know that Donald Trump did it when we made him president.
Because he's Christian and he picked it. That's what he wanted to swear in on. Ted Crockett with the More campaign. Good luck tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
He honestly did know it. Sometimes people know shit.
Yeah.
But obviously, you're not going to say it because they have a side, they have a horse in the race. But that was the look of a person that honestly did not know something. It was like, oh shit, really?
And that's the campaign spokesman. I mean, that's who you're putting out there to deliver your message.
They said that guy ran. Did he say he was a 3-term?
Yeah, I don't know what he's been elected to, but it's so to me those are disqualifiers. Like I don't.
Well, you remember in the car we were talking about on the way there, the scariest thing that I heard the whole time was that someone had posted up that that Roy Moore felt that basically all the Constitution after the first 10.
Yeah, first 10 amendments. If we eliminated everything, his quote was, if we eliminated everything after the first 10 amendments, that would take care of a lot of problems.
Now, look, I don't remember all the amendments from school and stuff, So, off the bat, if you ask me that, I'd be like, what? I don't know. Like, what is it? I mean, obviously 1 and 2, everybody knows. But I'm sitting there, and then the person started putting the different amendments down. And like, okay, well, this would get rid of, slavery was abolished, women's suffrage. And I'm like looking at it going, oh shit, like you're really kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Like, for him being a judge, he obviously knows which amendments he's talking about and very specifically pointed out that he didn't agree with them.
Well, yeah, and he had been asked even just as recently as September, because he was on the Trump train. Speaking of making America great again, he was asked, when was the last time you think America was great? And he said, well, it was back during times of slavery. He said, even though we had slavery, families were united. Families were close. Families had direction. And I thought, yeah, except for the slave families where they ripped the babies away from the moms and sold them to other people. Like, who says that? That to me...
And then only loses an election by a few thousand
Yes, by a little. And it's considered a major upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just thought, even in Alabama, I thought we were in a place where when somebody said something like that, we would just say, oh, you need to take a seat, Now, Travis, one more thing on this. Go to that clip of the dad. This was interesting, Frank. This just to show you, how this sort of thing may have backfired even in Alabama. Now, this guy's name is Nathan Mathis, and he was outside of a Roy Moore rally protesting. And he was protesting against Roy Moore. His daughter was gay, and she killed herself. Play this clip. Really.
It was Nathan Mathis. My daughter was Patty Sue Mathis. That's her right there. Judge Roy Moore called her a prevert on one reason, because she was gay. If he called her a prevert, he called your child a prevert if she was gay, or your son was gay. This is something people need to stop and think about. You're supposed to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution said all men are created equal. Well, how is my daughter a prevert just because she was gay? Does it mean she was born gay? I don't know the answer to that. But she was gay. There she is.
Are you a man of faith?
Am I a man of faith? Yes. I am.
Being out here tonight, what do you hope to accomplish?
I don't know what I'll accomplish. I really don't. I had mixed emotions about coming, but somebody needs to speak up. And if it's all to no avail, so be it. It won't be the first time I've done something to no avail, okay?
How far of a drive
But my
was it?
sign there speaks for itself, and my sign is true. Sir?
How far of a drive was this for you?
I'm only about 15 to 20 miles away. I was born here in Midland City.
So are you suggesting that the suicide of your daughter was because of...
No, I'm not suggesting that. I was anti-gay myself. I said bad things to my daughter myself, which I regret. But I can't take back what happened to my daughter. But stuff like saying my daughter's a prevert, sure, I'm sure that bothered her. Now, you know, Judge Moore not just said my daughter. He didn't call my daughter by name. He said all gay people are preverts, abominations. That's not true. We don't need a person like that representing us in Washington. That's why I'm here.
How long ago did you lose your daughter?
I thought that was so sad. You know, that guy is, I'm going to assume, not a Bernie Sanders liberal.
No.
You know? And he was so candid as to say, you know what, he was anti-gay.
Yeah.
You know, he said things he can't take back. It's just that's what's real right there, you know? And I just thought, well, at least as horrible as that is, and I would never wish that on somebody, it goes to show you that even in that deeply you know, I guess philosophically stubborn environment, that you get personally touched by something like that. It's amazing how it changes when it's your own kids.
Yeah.
You know,
things become personal. It gives you a better perspective on it.
Yeah. I just, I don't know. I was impressed by that because I thought, you know, this isn't a guy who is just looking for something to protest or is looking for his camera time. And, you know, he may not be the most well-educated person, but I tell you what, it really seemed like he could teach Roy Moore a thing or two about you know, about empathy for sure. So that was that was some interesting fireworks on election night, and Roy Moore has still not conceded the election. He wants a recount, and he basically, the last I heard, put it on God. That he's counting on God to deliver a recount miracle for him. So we'll see what happens. He had Steve Bannon in his court. By the way, you like my Steve Bannon outfit? If you're watching on YouTube on our Phone Booth Fighting channel, I kind of got my Steve Bannon jacket on. Have you seen Steve Bannon much? Do you know his look?
No.
He is a very unique. Pull up a Google image, if you will, Travis, of Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, much like myself, has locked into a look, but it's an unusual one. He, of course, is the voice of the alt-right, the Bright Bannon crowd.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was until Trump had picked him to.
Right. He was one of Trump's top advisors. But he always
and then
has.
I started looking at some of the stuff he was saying and doing articles.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he always has he's always wearing a jacket, but like an outdoor jacket. Like he came in from a cold, rainy day and it just didn't bother him to take his jacket off, kind of like I'm doing tonight. And always unshaven. We're getting nothing, huh? We're getting the pinwheel of death. Okay, well, that's all right. Just we'll pull something up if it clears up. Anyway, it makes more sense if you see the image. Most people out there have seen Steve Bannon, but unusual look on that dude. All right, and I'm one to talk. Let's wrap up on this. Oh, there you go. Well, we'll get Travis to pull it up while he's looking. Did you see, back to MMA for a second before we wrap up, Frank? Did you see this latest with George St. Pierre?
No,
he is now he's vacated the middleweight title. So we went from he beat Michael Bisping. Will he ever fight again? We don't know. Will he go back to welterweight? We found out it was written in his contract that he was going to have to fight Robert Whittaker to unify the title. And he says he's been diagnosed with colitis now, and so he won't be fighting anytime soon. He vacates the middleweight title, and Whittaker will now fight former champion Luke Rockhold for the middleweight title at UFC 221, February 10th in Perth, Australia. Since losing that title to Bisping, Rockhold has come back with a submission win over David Branch. A lot of people are being critical, Frank, of GSP for kind of leaving the middleweight division in uncertainty. He comes in, he picks Bisping, he beats Bisping, and then vacates the title. Whittaker's an interim champion. I don't know. I mean, does it seem as chaotic to you as it does to them? Top picture.
Well, wait a minute. That should have been pointed out, and I think people did point that out. Mm-hmm. Luke Rockhold being one of them, that by allowing George St. Pierre to fight for the title, this wasn't his decision. I mean, obviously, he's going to try to do whatever's best for his career. That's the UFC's fault. They allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
And create this. I mean, even while the fight occurred, it put the whole middleweight division on hold.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
don't blame George for that. He's the fighter. I blame the organization for that.
Well, I actually thought when I heard that there was that language in St. Pierre's contract that he would have to unify against Whittaker, I was like, oh, okay. Well, they thought ahead. They, made sure this was going to happen. But gosh, I mean, now I'm not even certain St. Pierre fights again at all. I don't know. I don't know what all this means.
I mean, and really, it's just, again, they're not a fight company. They're an entertainment first company. That's why the whole ranking system that they put forth doesn't really matter. They're not trying to get the number 1 guy to fight the number 2 guy to fight the number 3 guy, or just beating the number 5 guy doesn't mean that it gives you a title shot, or it's purely for numbers, and it made sense to the UFC that George coming back fighting Bisping would create good numbers, and that's all that really mattered. They didn't care about who was, what the future of the middleweight division organization looked like.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was a good fight. I thought it made sense. I liked watching GSP and Bisping. I'm necessarily complaining about
you have
that.
to remove the title before it. If there wasn't for a title fight, I think it's an awesome fight.
Yeah.
I think the fact that Bisping was the champ, I don't think, these super matchups that are purely just, pay-per-view sells, I think that if you involve the belt, then you take away the legitimacy of the belt.
Yeah.
If, you can't have that, having Dan Henderson fight for the belt, really didn't make a lot of sense. He jumped over a lot of people. And then, Bisping fighting George St. Pierre, who hasn't fought in 4 years and unranked. Belt-wise, that doesn't make sense. If you're trying to put forth a structure, you just basically just threw it out the window.
Yeah. Well, it's been weird with St. Pierre because, I mean, ultimately he came in, he claimed that title, and then left again. But you also remember the false start leading up to that, where we had the press conference, this fight's happening, wait, no it's not, that ship has sailed, we don't know what's going on with GSP, wait, now he's back, now he's gone again. So, yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll see if GSP fights again ever at all, or what's going to happen with this colitis. It's a colon thing, right? Isn't that what that means?
Isn't that when your own immune system attacks your intestines?
Travis, you date a nurse. This is it's about as close as we can get to a expert medical opinion at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
It's an inflammation thing or something.
All right. Well, next episode we'll do an in-depth breakdown on colitis.
That's what happens when you eat too many hot wings, right?
Yeah. Well, that's probably where GSP went wrong.
Yeah. Colitis is an inflammation of the colon. Colitis may be acute or self-limited. Anybody else can Google this shit.
Yeah. Nothing I want. All right. Okay, Frank. Let's do this. It's time to tuck you into bed.
You know that you're going to pack up, you and Travis. I'm just running right into the bedroom.
Yeah.
So we're not only saying bye on air, but we're saying bye for real.
Let's do this, Frank. Tell everybody about that Amazon banner. It's an important time. It's the holiday season. There's only a handful of shopping days left until Christmas. If you're going to shop on Amazon, go to phoneboothfighting.com and click through that Amazon banner first. Tell them why.
Well, just one way to help us out here at the show. Whatever you click on and you get your needs and wants, a small portion of your proceeds go back to the show.
That's it. Of course, the merchandise section is there as well with all the Phone Booth Fighting T-shirts, multiple styles available. You can follow us on social media, and Frank is going to tell you how to do that.
Facebook and Instagram, it's Phone Booth Fighting. Snapchat and Twitter, Phone Booth Fight.
That's it. Follow Travis on Twitter at Scuba T Diving. T is in Travis. So Frank is going to go get some sleep. We're going to tape another show in a couple of days. Frank will be rested and ready for that one, right?
Hopefully back on the serve.
Okay. You're not going to go to any other countries. You're not going to fly to Mexico for 6 hours again over the next couple of days.
Next week.
All right.
I got to fly to Moscow, and then I'm flying back Christmas Eve. One flight gets messed up, I'm going to be in the doghouse.
Okay. All right. But then after that,
I'm good.
We're straightening it out for 2018 because you got to go back to punching people.
Yeah, this is hard to do it this way.
Yeah, you're probably one of the few people that be like, "Oh, this is great. I'm back to people trying to knock me unconscious."
Yes.
What a more relaxing year this 2018 is going to be.
Hey man, traveling's hard.
All right. For Frank Mir, I'm Richard Hunter. We'll see you right back here next time on Phone Booth Fighting.